Even if I live forever, I will never cease to be amazed at how quickly a person's fortunes can change. A week ago, I was happy as a clam. My 2 children are in college and doing well. My wife, Maya, has taught third grade at a local school since she graduated from college 22 years ago. She's blonde, smart, sexy, funny, beautiful. You get the idea. We got married the summer after Maya graduated from college. I never regretted my marriage, not for a minute. I really don't know why she chose me. She could have had any man she wanted, but I'm not complaining. Mia is a wonderful mother and is largely responsible for how good our children have turned out to be. I work for the Walter and Zane Soda Company. Don't be upset if you've never heard of it. This family-owned business was founded by 2 brothers in a garage in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, back in 1963. No one seems to know exactly where or how they developed their formula, but there is no better carbonated soft drink on the planet. Demand for their products continues to grow. Today, they have 450 employees and resist any further expansion. The family feels they will lose control over the quality of their product if they go big. A few weeks ago, Time magazine published an article about the family and the soda they produce. I now believe this story triggered all my recent problems. The magazine emphasized how closely the original family formula was guarded. Towards the end of the story, my name appeared as the person in charge of the company's security. I've been working for Walter and Zane since I left the Army in 1985. I climbed the ranks and was appointed head of security 3 years ago. The title sounds impressive, but the reality was that security was never a major concern, at least not until that damn magazine story. It portrayed the secret formula as being worth millions. In hindsight, I think that's probably accurate. Once the story hit the newsstands, interest in our product and its production process surged dramatically. My job quickly became more challenging. It was clear that we needed to enhance our measures to safeguard the formula. Consequently, I ended up in Las Vegas last week at an exhibition focused on everything a company might require to defend against corporate espionage. I felt a bit like James Bond. I managed to gather some very useful ideas and even placed orders for some hardware and software for the company. The final day of the show was Saturday. By the evening, I was mentally drained from attempting to absorb so much information. I found myself in the hotel bar, sipping on a beer and unwinding. With no expectations, I simply relaxed. Suddenly, I heard someone take a seat beside me, and I casually turned my head to see who it was. I nearly toppled out of my chair. Standing next to me was a stunning red-haired girl in a short dress with a low neckline. Her cleavage created an incredible valley that a man could gaze at all night. Well, that's exactly what I did. Are you going to spend the whole night filming Gemini, or are you going to buy the girl a drink? She asked, flashing a beautiful smile. I managed to pull my tongue back into my mouth and called the bartender. I bought her a drink and ordered another beer for myself. It was on Saturday. Just 3 days later, I found myself fighting for my career. I arrived home on Sunday afternoon and returned to work on Monday morning. By Tuesday morning, I was in my office, trying to prepare a report for the board of directors for the afternoon meeting. Suddenly, I noticed an email appearing on my monitor. The sender's username was Best Friend, and there were attachments. My curiosity was piqued, so I opened the letter. The message was very short, consisting of only 2 sentences. I sat there and reread it at least a dozen times. The message didn't make much sense, but I knew it would be crucial for me. It read, "At noon, drive to Casey Park and park next to the black Lincoln near the playground. If you don't, these photos will be emailed to your boss, wife, kids, parents, and numerous community leaders." With great trepidation, I began to open the attached photos. My stomach immediately churned, and I felt nauseous. Somehow, someone had managed to take a photo of me with the red head. In the first photo, we were in a bar. Anyone can take a photo in a public place, but then there were photographs that made my head spin. They were taken in my hotel room and were quite explicit. At first, I was furious. How the hell could these photos have been taken in a private room? This was a blatant violation of my rights. Whoever took them had broken numerous laws. Then my thoughts shifted, and all I could think about was how Mia would react if she found out. What would be worse is if her parents and our children saw them. My mind began to grasp the gravity of the situation I was in. Clearly, I was being threatened. If the pictures of the naked redhead kneeling in front of me were to be exposed, my life could turn into a disaster. To make matters worse, there were several even more incriminating photographs. In one where she was on top, I could even see a few large freckles on her chest. I really didn't want the boss, the kids, and especially Leah to know these photos existed. Walter and Zane James were quite religious people. Everyone who worked for them had a morals clause in their contract. Over the years, several people had been fired for behavior detrimental to the company. Someone got caught at work, someone was stealing from the company, and one guy was fired because he constantly lied about being sick when in fact he was fishing. As I thought about the situation, I decided that I needed to come up with a plan to deal with the problem. Why were the pictures taken? Why were they emailed to me? Why was I told to go to the park? How could I spin the situation well? There could only be one reason for my current predicament, at least one that made sense to me. It was the formula I was tasked with protecting. This formula was at the center of the storm I suddenly found myself in. Perhaps I was being blackmailed into revealing it. A major problem was that I had no idea what this mixture was. I didn't even drink soda. I drank beer. As the head of security, I had access to every part of the facility. Someone smarter than me, but with my ability to access more heavily guarded areas, could probably hack into the computers or the damn file that contained the secret. This must be the reason why my life is going downhill. I glanced at my watch and realized I had to leave within an hour to reach the park by noon. Reluctantly, I picked up the phone, called Walter James, and quickly arranged a meeting with him and Zane. At precisely noon, I drove into the park and stopped next to a black Lincoln. Two men were sitting in the car, apparently waiting for me. The guy in the passenger seat got out and held the door, nodding to indicate that he wanted me to get into the car. I looked at both men. I'd never seen either one before. "You were very clever," remarked the man in the driver's seat. "I have a laptop set up to send photos to every family member, friend, boss, and colleague you've ever known. I picked this spot because I can access Wi-Fi from the hotel across the street. All it takes is pressing the enter key." "I like your attitude, Taylor," the idiot chuckled. "It's so simple. You're a security expert, like a woodpecker carpenter. I hired a woman for this Saturday night, and you yourself noticed the redhead before my girlfriend arrived. It saved me a couple $100, and the red one was much better than the one I had for you. The photos turned out pretty good, don't you think? I want money, okay?" The man chuckled. "I'd also want you to hand over your ID and the code you used to access the most sensitive areas of your company to my friend in the backseat." "No problem, Taylor." He grinned once more. "I'll just press this key and you'll find yourself in a whirl of shit so fast your head will spin." "Right now," he growled, "we won't give you a chance to ruin everything. Hand it over now and we'll wait here until he returns. If everything goes smoothly, I'll give you this laptop and you'll never see us again. Your family will never know what a cheater you are, and we will all be happy." "That's usually what happens," my blackmailer agreed. "But on the first Tuesday of the month, the office staff should be in the conference room with the bosses, discussing strategy and marketing for the next month. Between 1 and 2, the place will be empty except for the guy watching the monitors. He's dumber than a fucking stick. My friend will be in and out before he knows what the hell is going on." I turned to look at the guy's partner in the back seat. He was grinning widely, holding an old Richard Nixon mask in his hands. It dawned on me that the cameras would capture Tricky Dicky and be of little use. I pulled out my ID and handed it to the guy, reciting the code number. The guy exited the car, crossed the street, got into the Nissan Sentra, and drove off. I remained seated next to my blackmailer waiting. He kept his finger lightly on the enter key the entire time, making the situation almost as nerve-wracking as sitting with a suicide bomber. "You have what you want, so give me the computer," I demanded, reaching for the laptop. "Oh," the bastard laughed, deliberately pressing the key. "What a pity. I guess you won't need my laptop now. The damage is already done, loser." I was considering whether to beat the crap out of him when his friend opened my door and flashed a knife. He motioned for me to leave. I carefully got out of the car, keeping a close eye on the guy with the knife. He slammed the door, hurried to the Nissan, and climbed inside. Both cars quickly drove away. I debated whether to jump in front of them, stop them, and end the nightmare I was in. I foolishly hoped that this idea would keep his end of the agreement and not send the photos. Now I had to face the problem. By the time I got back to my office, I noticed that the turbine of life was spinning incredibly fast, with waste flying everywhere, particularly into my face. The internet moved much faster than my old Jeep. Shortly after I stepped into my office, Sophia, Walter's secretary, called. She and I had a good rapport, and she always liked chatting with Maya at office parties. Her voice revealed that she was concerned about me. "Rory, I need you in the meeting room," she said. "This might be about the photographs that were emailed to all the board members a while back. I don't want to judge, but I can't believe you did this to your marriage. Maya loves you so much." "I think that's my problem, Sophia. I think she loves me enough. Of course, this is much more than I deserve." "I'll get up now," I said to her. To reach the boardroom, I had to pass by Sophia's desk. Upon entering the office, I saw she was already there, waiting for me. She gestured for me to take a seat and pointed to a chair. "They told me to ask you to wait here, Rory. They'll send for you soon," she promised. "Do I know your friend?" I glanced at Sophia, who had a photo displayed on the monitor. Sophia zoomed in, enlarging the image until the red-haired woman's face and upper body filled the entire screen. The woman's red hair was scattered across her face, leaving only her smile visible. I had to admit, it was quite a big smile. "Do you spend a lot of time in Vegas, Sophia?" I asked. "If not, then it is unlikely that you know her." I had to sit and cool my heels for almost half an hour. Sophia seemed to like the photos. She looked at each of them several times, then she picked up the phone and called someone. I realized it was too good for me to resist. She was probably calling her friends and neighbors to tell them about the wonderful porn she had received and would send to the few people in the world who had not yet seen the pictures. While I waited, my mood became darker and darker. Finally, Sophia received a call and turned to me. "You can go now, Rory." I stepped into the room. There were 7 people present. Naturally, Walter and Zane were among them. The others, except for one, were family members. Zane's wife had passed away several years prior, and her daughter Gwen had taken her place on the board of directors. Walter's wife, Mildred, was seated to his left. The remaining individuals were Walter's son, Zane's son, and the company's CFO, Bob Butler. "I turned to you as soon as I realized that there would be an attempt at blackmail, as you know, Walter. I was able to very quickly develop a plan that should allow the company not only to keep the secret of success, but also to find out who was behind the attempted theft," I replied. Walter nodded in agreement. "That part went very well, Rory. We've already gotten a few reports from the company you suggested. They're tracking these thugs as we speak. This idiot stole my wife's recipe for a rather bitter drink she likes to serve during the Christmas holidays. The issue, though, is what you did that made you vulnerable to blackmail. These pictures are very disturbing. You're a married man, and you were in Vegas representing our company. I claim that the photographs were taken illegally. They have invaded my privacy and should not be considered. What I or any of you do behind closed doors is our business and is not subject to review by our employers, friends, or acquaintances," I finished. "The issue is that we're aware of what you did in private, Rory. It's a family business, and our standards are pretty high, though they're quite reasonable," Zane responded. "We hold our marriage vows sacred. We can't condone or overlook this type of behavior with any woman, regardless of who she is." Realizing I couldn't convince them that my privacy had been violated and that they should disregard the photographs, I understood that threatening legal action would only speed up their decision to show me the door. Their convictions weren't influenced by the courts. After some contemplation, I decided to leave and consult a lawyer about my options. I was aware this would be an expensive and unpleasant lawsuit, and I hoped for a better resolution. "I have nothing more to add," I concluded, "and now it must be." The door suddenly swung open, and Sophia entered the room. This was highly unusual for her, and it was evident that she was very nervous. "I am so sorry. I hate interfering with the board of directors, but I will never forgive myself if I don't at least try. Mrs. Taylor to see you." Mia entered the room, heading directly towards the group. She held her head high, looking gorgeous despite her long, simple coat and the large bag she carried. "I apologize for interrupting you, ladies and gentlemen, but I believe I have some information that may shed light on this situation and prevent you from making a terrible mistake," she announced. Walter responded kindly, "Mrs. Taylor, Mia, it's understandable that you're upset, but this meeting room isn't the place for internal conflicts. We're sorry this occurred, but we need to take action. Your anger at Rory isn't what we want to see here." Mia laughed at the suggestion. "Anger at Rory? I love him more than ever. You all know what a wonderful worker, father, and husband he was. Now that you've seen the pictures, you also know what a great lover he is." I quickly approached Mia, grabbed her hand, and tried to pull her out of the room. but she resisted and pulled her hand away. Rory, you are such a wonderful husband. This is what I have to do. I want them to know the truth, and I know you won't tell it. Maya insisted. I will do it. The truth is this, Maya replied. The woman in the photographs is me. I had a seminar in Los Angeles the same week Rory was in Vegas. I surprised him by arranging my flight home so I could spend one night in Vegas. It turned out to be one of the best dates I've ever been on, if you know what I mean. Bob Butler chimed in. Wow, did you buy any oceanfront property while you were in Las Vegas, Mrs. Taylor? If we believe your story, we'll probably believe anything, right? If you really are the woman in these photos, why didn't Rory just tell us ahead of time and skip all this trouble? It's easy, Mr. Butler, Maya replied. Rory is a real gentleman. He would rather be fired than embarrass or humiliate me. There is nothing he wouldn't do to spare his family pain. Safia called me and mentioned the photographs, suspecting that I was the woman in them. I checked my email right away and saw that the pictures were taken in our hotel room without our consent. Rory was ready to face anything you had to offer to shield me. I believe this is the kind of person this company needs. If this is true, and I personally don't believe it is, then why do you call yourself this Red Lady? Butler inquired. Aren't you fabricating this story to help him keep his role in the company? What other reason would you have to humiliate yourself with such an outrageous claim? It's simple again, Mr. Butler, Maya objected hotly. I'm ashamed that someone could be so vile as to take pictures of my husband and me while making love. The truth, however, is that my love for my husband far exceeds any personal embarrassment I may experience. I will not stand by and allow him to be slandered or insulted. He is a wonderful person with an impeccable reputation and should never tolerate this. How old are you, dear? Asked Mrs. Mildred James. Leah shifted her focus to Walter James's wife, pausing for a moment as she studied the older woman. After a brief hesitation, she responded, Since I'm revealing everything here, I might as well tell you, Mrs. James, I am 44 years old. I weigh 122 pounds and am an inch shy of 5.5 feet tall. Butler snorted. With all due respect to the ladies present, the woman in these photographs is much younger than 44 years old. I'm willing to bet that, whores, there's not even 35 in these photos. Before he could finish his sentence, I grabbed him by the lapels of his jacket and threw him across the table. I stepped back, ready to give him a good hook when Mia grabbed my arm. Rory, do not even think about it. He simply states what he considers to be a fact. Let him go now, Maya barked. I released my hold on Butler, allowing him to fall back into his seat. It was clear that my efforts were now a thing of the past. Mr. Butler, I don't know how you feel about your wife being insulted in your presence, but believe me, Rory will not tolerate it from you or anyone else. He just worships me, Maya said with a radiant smile, directing her gaze at me. My dear, Mildred James interjected. I must say, I admire how you both stand up for each other. However, despite Mr. Butler's upsetting rudeness, he did make a valid point. You are 44 years old, and the woman in the photographs appears much younger. Her face is never visible because her hair always covers it. Mina pulled a red wig from her bag and positioned it over her blonde hair. The group at the table remained skeptical. You seem to have a red wig, Mrs. Taylor, but the age difference is still a serious obstacle for us, Mildred James remarked. For example, it's hard for me to accept that you are the woman in the photographs. It is quite possible that you will go to great lengths to seg your husband's position in our company. You have no idea how far I would go for Rory, Mrs. James, Maya replied. Do you accept that if the woman in the photographs is me, then Rory did nothing wrong? That he essentially helped your company prevent the theft of your formula at great personal embarrassment and ridicule? Would you agree that a married couple can enjoy love in private, as depicted in these photographs, without shame or humiliation? Is it possible that if we had pictures of you and Mr. James in the heat of passion, there wouldn't be much you weren't doing here? It's not about Mr. James and me, Mrs. Taylor, said Mildred James with a smile. I must admit, I would feel very uncomfortable if photographs of my personal life were shared online. Though I wouldn't mind as much if I looked as good as the young lady in these photos. Unfortunately, it seems we've reached a dead end here. I won't accept this. Rory is accused of inappropriate behavior. In fact, he is condemned for loving his wife. The so-called proof that he cheated on me is a bunch of photos. They don't even show my face because of the cheap wig I bought at Lags. You can't even see my face in the photo taken at the bar when I was still dressed, Maya said calmly. For some reason, I knew it would come to this. I want you to look at these photos that Sofia has enlarged, Maya insisted, taking 2 glossy photographs from her purse and throwing them on the table in front of the group. Look at the freckles on the left breast. Also, check out the little tattoo below that my husband is so excited about. Then compare them to this. I thought I had seen everything. Now everyone has seen everything. As she spoke, Mia swiftly unbuttoned her coat and let it fall from her shoulders. She stood there, completely naked. I was unsure whether to reach under the table, grab her coat and cover her up, or just stand there and beam. There is something undeniably erotic about seeing your wife naked in front of others. I've seen her naked for 22 years, but she's never looked sexier. After what felt like an unnecessarily long examination, Zane James responded, "I have come to the conclusion, Mrs. Taylor, that you are indeed the woman in the photograph and the epitome of beauty. I also think we owe you and the extremely lucky Mr. Taylor standing next to you a huge apology. In retrospect, during this process, you were both subjected to unfair accusations bordering on slander. I now propose that the board of directors formally apologize to Rory Taylor, acknowledge that his quick-thinking saved our company from losing our formula, and give him a bonus of $5,000, as well as a 5% increase in his salary. Any other suggestions?" 6 other members appeared to respond at the same time, backing Zane's proposal. It passed without any opposition. Mia was still hugging me when Walter James gently placed the coat over her shoulders. His wife, Mildred, stood by, waiting for us to part. "My dear, it's almost impossible to believe that a woman could look as stunning as you do at 44 or at any age. I'm sorry for my initial skepticism, but I must say, if I hadn't seen it myself, I would never have thought that a teacher could transform so dramatically just by putting on a wig and removing her clothes. Your dedication to your husband and the respect and love he has for you is truly moving. It's a shame that these photos of you are out there, especially since you look so good, but at least your face is unrecognizable in them.